Hi everyone, it's Mary. Thomas Jefferson was one of our founding fathers and the third president of the United States. He's remembered for many things: the writing of the Declaration of Independence, his views on slavery and a possible relationship with Sally Hemings, and the separation of church and state. Pauline Maier, a notable historian, has suggested that it's not so much Jefferson as the Declaration of Independence that has been memorialized. She stated that it was remade into a sacred text, a statement of basic, enduring truths, often described with words borrowed from the vocabulary of religion. As Jefferson's life advanced, he became more and more concerned that people understand the principles in and the people responsible for the writing of the Declaration of Independence. He wrote, "This was the object, not to find out new principles or new arguments, never before thought of, not merely to say things which had never been said before, but to place before mankind the common sense of the subject, in terms so plain and firm as to command their assent, and to justify ourselves in the independent stand that we were compelled to take." And later on in his life, written actually on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the passing of the Declaration of Independence, he wrote a letter to the mayor of Washington, and he wrote that all eyes are opened or opening to the rights of man. He also wrote about the blessings and the security of self-government. And I think that at this point in time, eyes are open to the rights of man and towards independence in itself, as can be seen through reforms that have been carried out and through revolutions that have been carried out since his time. In terms of slavery, throughout his whole life, he was against it. He called it a moral depravity and a hideous blot. He believed that slavery was a threat to the American nation. He also thought that slavery was contrary to the laws of nature, which decreed that everyone had a right to personal liberty, as we can see in the Declaration of Independence. These views were radical, however, in a world where slave labor was just the norm. At the time of the American Revolution, Jefferson was actively involved in legislation that he hoped would result in slavery's abolition. He drafted laws and ordinances that prohibited the importation of enslaved Africans and would ban slavery in the territories, which he hoped would stop the expansion of slavery in the colonies. He advocated a plan of gradual emancipation by abolishing the slave trade and then improving living conditions of the slaves, and then emancipating all slaves born after a certain date, and then which would be followed by total abolition of all slaves. But he always believed that the emancipation of the slaves would have to be a governmental process. He thought slave owners needed to consent to free their slaves together in unity in an act of emancipation. Now, it can be difficult for us in our time to accept a man who focused so much on freedom when he was a slave owner himself, but we must also remember the context of his time period. In terms of church and state, in 1777, Thomas Jefferson wrote a bill for establishing religious freedom, which is one of the most significant documents in American religious history. And in it he stated that no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinion in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. However, this bill was not passed when it was first introduced, and similar to his views on slavery, the idea of religious freedom just proved too radical for the time period. His goal was to have freedom of religious expression. To Jefferson, religious liberty meant that the government should cease any interference with a person's religion except to protect the person in the choice of the right to worship God or not to worship God. So in conclusion, Thomas Jefferson's legacy involves freedom, specifically for the colonists from Great Britain, the slaves from the colonists, and for all colonists in religious matters. Without Thomas Jefferson and his views on freedom and independence, the world we live in today could be a very different place. Thank you.